Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Welcome to the last edition of Vantage in 2023. For us, it was the biggest highlight of the year. We launched the show and you supported us. We cannot thank you enough for the viewership and the constant feedback. It keeps us motivated and on our toes. We had a great year thanks to all of you, and we hope this relationship gets stronger in the year ahead. 2024 will be shaped by many things. Artificial intelligence will be one of them. We saw the possibilities this year, and the job losses, they will continue. Google could fire some 30,000 workers as it switches to AI. The India-China relationship shows no sign of improving. Now, Beijing is accusing New Delhi of double standards on terrorism. If it sounds absurd, it is. We'll explain. The Red Sea threat is serious. It may be hitting India's rice exports. We have the numbers. In the US, Donald Trump is being disqualified from election in another state. Is this a free and fair election then? What is a British warship doing in a territorial dispute between Venezuela and Guyana? What were the big wins for Indian diplomacy this year? Why has Turkey announced a wage hike of 49%? What's a youthquake? Can Africa cause the next one? What's extreme food? And are you under pressure to have an extraordinary New Year's Eve? We'll tell you why it may be counterproductive. The headlines first. China appoints a new defense minister. Dong Jun will replace Li Shangfu, who was dismissed earlier this year. Li Shangfu disappeared from the public eye in August. No reason was given for his removal. Russia launches a massive missile attack on Ukraine. 122 missiles and 36 drones hit Ukrainian targets, killing 18 people. Ukraine says it is the biggest aerial attack in the 22-month-long war. Vietnam's economy slows down in 2023. The economy grew by around 5% this year, falling short of the government target of 6.5%. The sluggish growth is mainly due to weak demand for exports. Nepal blames pilot error for the January plane crash that killed 72 people. New report says pilots ended up cutting power by mistake. The January 15 crash was Nepal's deadliest plane crash in 30 years. The US will keep its legal border crossings with Mexico open. The decision comes after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met Mexico's president. The two countries will work on stemming the unprecedented migrant influx. Nearly 10,000 people are crossing into the US every day. And a century after his debut, Mickey Mouse will go public on the 1st of January. Disney's copyright on the first Mickey Mouse ends after 95 years. This opens the doors for potential remakes, spin-offs, and adaptation. We began 2023 with a question: will artificial intelligence take our jobs? And we end 2023 with the same question. No answers though. Experts and corporate bosses are non-committal. They won't say yes or no, but their decisions reveal a clear trend. Just look at Google. Reports say the company is planning to reduce its workforce, basically fire people. And how many jobs are at stake? Around 30,000. That's a big number, 30,000 jobs. Google only has around 170,000 employees, so 17% of them could be fired. And what's the reason? Artificial intelligence. Google wants to use AI in its daily operations, especially in two fields. One is the ad sales department, and the second is customer support. Now, the ad sales is a very important department. In 2020, Google Ads made around $147 billion in revenue. $147 billion. That was 80% of the company's total inflow. Then why the layoffs? Because Google thinks AI can do a better job. This year, they launched an AI-driven ad program. It's called Performance Max, and the results are good. Businesses that use this program reported 18% more conversions, meaning more people visited them thanks to the ad. Last year, without AI, it was 13%. So clearly, AI helps. Same with customer support. Whether it's handling complaints or asking for reviews or seeking feedback, AI seems to be much more efficient. And Google did warn about this. In January, they laid off 12,000 workers. They said the company is refocusing, whatever that means. But Google is not alone. AI has taken hundreds of thousands of jobs in 2023. Like at IBM, the company plans to replace around 8,000 workers with artificial intelligence. Paytm fired close to 1,000 workers. Again, AI was cited as a reason. Apparently, Paytm is using AI to do repetitive tasks. Another Indian example is Dukaan. It's an e-commerce platform. This year, Dukaan replaced 90% of its support staff with AI, 90%. And 2024 will be more of the same. Take a look at what a US survey found. 44% companies say some jobs will be replaced by artificial intelligence. 37% say AI has already taken jobs. So forget existential threats and Terminator problems. This is the real risk from AI. The risk of jobs. Studies say AI could take millions of existing jobs. At the same time, it will also create millions of new ones. So the question is, what should you do? How can you prepare for these new jobs? If you're in school or college, it's time to think. Do some research, get advice from industry experts, basically figure out a strategy. And I'm not saying don't follow your dream, but see if that dream will be gobbled up by AI. Many colleges have already started adapting. For example, IIT Bombay. It has made AI and data science mandatory for students. So clearly things are moving in one direction. Make sure you are not moving in the opposite one. But what if you're already in the workforce? What do you do then? Well, then the old mantra still stands. You have to keep updating your skills, learn new techniques and methods, acquire more knowledge, keep researching and learning. Only then can you remain relevant. You can't depend on companies to protect your jobs from AI because they won't. Just look at Google. It makes around $14 billion in profit every year. That's $56 billion annually. And I'm talking pure profits, not revenue, $56 billion. Yet it's firing 30,000 workers. Can Google afford to keep them on? Of course they can. It's one of the richest companies in the world. But it won't because that's how companies function. So in 2024, we need a reset. Every stakeholder needs to review where they stand. Parents, teachers, schools, companies, headhunters, all of them. Because AI is coming for some of our jobs and nobody can say there wasn't a warning. Our next story is from China. It's about India. China is accusing India of double standards. On what? Terrorism. Listen to this.
Terrorism is humanity's common enemy. China firmly opposes double standards on counter-terrorism. To support and use terrorist groups and let them thrive out of one's selfish interests at the expense of international and regional security benefits no one and will only backfire. China stands for strengthening counter-terrorism cooperation among all countries to jointly fight all forms of terrorism.
It's a bit rich coming from China, a lecture on terrorism and regional security, especially when you consider China's source, Pakistan, a state sponsor of terror and a safe haven for terrorists. And here's what triggered this statement. A Baloch activist in Pakistan surrendered this month. And he's said to have made a claim that he was funded by India. That's what he claimed, that he was funded by India. He said, India is fueling the Baloch insurgency. No proof was presented. And this was a statement made in Pakistani custody after he surrendered. Now, China is presenting it as the gospel truth. It's a convenient argument. Blame India for the troubles of Balochistan while giving cover to Pakistani terrorists, because that's what Beijing does. It has a long history of doing this. You may remember the Masood Azhar case. India wanted him listed as a global terrorist. It repeatedly raised the case at the United Nations, but China kept blocking it. They blocked the listing in 2009, then again in 2016, and then again in 2017, before finally agreeing in 2019. So China gave cover to Masood Azhar for a decade, and this was just one case. In 2022, China blocked the blacklisting of two terrorists. Hafiz Talha Saeed, the son of Hafiz Saeed, the mastermind of the 2008 Mumbai attacks, and Shahid Mahmood, another member of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. China blocked a listing this year too of Sajid Mir. He too was involved in the Mumbai attack. So 3 terrorists in 2 years protected by China, and China shields Pakistan in other ways as well, like at the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, the Global Terror Financing Watchdog. In 2018, Pakistan was grey-listed by the FATF for failing to prevent money laundering and terror financing. Pakistan stayed on this grey list for 4 years. It was finally removed in 2022, and for those 4 years, China protected Pakistan. It helped them stay out of the blacklist. Basically, Pakistan's terror factories get an insurance from China. And now this alliance is expanding. Pakistani terrorists are also said to be getting weapons from China. This is what Indian security officials have recently discovered. Some reports emerged earlier this year. Indian agencies found Chinese pistols, grenades, night vision devices and drones with Pakistani terrorists. They say these were supplied by the ISI. So is China now arming Pakistani terrorists? We cannot confirm it yet, but we won't put it past Beijing. They see Pakistan as an asset, a vassal state, and India as a threat, a competing power. So they amplify Pakistan's conspiracy theories and target India at every possible opportunity. Beijing's diplomatic statements are getting sharper. This week we told you about it, the smear campaign of Chinese mouthpieces. They're calling India the graveyard of foreign companies. Why? Because Chinese phone maker Vivo is under investigation in India. I'll give another example. Recently, India held naval drills in the Philippines. An Indian warship had sailed to Manila. The drill happened in the South China Sea and Beijing did not like it. This week, the Chinese military issued a statement. It said they saw the reports about the drills and they should not hurt regional peace and stability. This is the same China that bullies neighbors and threatens peace. It has been harassing the Philippines, ramming into their ships on the high seas. But a simple military drill has upset them. We say this is what double standards look like. And now let's talk about the Red Sea crisis. India is voicing its concerns once again. This time, India's Commerce Minister has made a statement. That's Piyush Goyal. He's assessing the impact of the disruptions. The full picture is yet to emerge, but the minister has shared an early assessment. These disruptions could have hit India's rice trade. Now, as you would know, India is a leading exporter of rice. It dominates 45% of the global market. Every year, India exports over 4 million tons of rice to the world. But recently, these exports were curbed. The government wanted to keep domestic prices in check. Inflation has been high and the harvest has been below expectations this year. So India is already exporting less. And now the trade routes are disrupted. Exporters have pending orders. They have to supply rice to Europe and West Asia. The size of these orders is large, around 500,000 tons of rice. The contracts are already in place, but the challenge is transportation. How do you get it there? India has also deployed the Navy for protection. 3 warships are stationed in the Arabian Sea. New Delhi has guaranteed the safety of routes. But exporters still face rising costs. When the Houthis began attacking ships, it led to logistical problems and safety concerns. Shipping companies jacked up prices. And this is playing out on different levels. The first problem is getting a ship. Some companies are not operating their ships. This includes names like Euronav, Evergreen and Ocean Network Express. They asked their ships to avoid the Red Sea, sail to safer waters and wait for further instructions. When the attacks began, 8 out of 10 major ship owners halted operations. They refused to send their ships to the Red Sea. One of them was Maersk, a leading logistics company. Its ships have recently returned to the Red Sea. Others are yet to follow suit. So with fewer ships operating, exporters have fewer options to choose from. And this shortage is driving up costs. That's the second problem. If you're an exporter and you somehow manage to get a ship, chances are you'll be paying a premium. So the overall cost of transportation has shot up. Supply chains are in disarray. Instead of halting operations, many shipping companies chose to reroute their ships. So these companies are still operating, but the ship owners are taking longer routes. This takes more fuel and more time. As of Wednesday, over 300 vessels have switched routes. Earlier, they took the Red Sea route and traveled via the Suez Canal. Now they're going around Africa. So a ship going from Asia to Northern Europe will end up paying $1 million extra for fuel. That's the price for every round trip, $1 million extra. So everyone is feeling the pinch here. Even the leading retailers, the likes of Walmart, IKEA, Home Depot and Amazon, these companies depend on supplies in China. The movement of goods has been disrupted. The supplies are scrambling. Indian exporters are in the same boat. And the inflated cost of shipping is being passed on to the consumers. Reports say rice exports from India could get more expensive. The cost of basmati rice could increase by 15 to 20%. What about the products that India imports, like oil? They too are vulnerable. Oil prices shot up by 2% this week. Last week, they rose by 3%. And higher oil prices will affect inflation numbers in India and elsewhere. That's how sensitive the global markets are. The longer this crisis drags on, the greater the risk to the economy. Another twist in the US presidential race, this time from the American state of Maine. It has disqualified former President Donald Trump, the second American state to do so. The first one was Colorado. It barred Trump last week. Now it's Maine. So Republican Party voters in the state may have to choose someone else. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot list. It's not certain yet, and that's for two reasons. First, the order has not come into effect. And second, it can always be challenged in a higher court. Let me explain. Every American state works differently. In Maine, the Secretary of State gave the order, but she has deferred its implementation. It will only come into effect when the courts give a go-ahead. Meanwhile, Donald Trump can always challenge the order. He has 5 days to appeal. If the court rules against him, he'll be disqualified. So as of today, he's not out of the race, technically. And then there is the US Supreme Court, the country's highest court. If it rules that Trump can contest, then no state will have the right to disqualify him. An order from the top court can stop all these individual state challenges. You know how many challenges there are? 30. Trump's candidacy has been challenged in 30 American states, and the rest could follow. So a Supreme Court judgment would put an end to all of this, one way or the other. And on what grounds do these states want to disqualify Trump? The insurrection clause. This is about Trump's role in the US Capitol riots, what happened on the 6th of January 2021. Hundreds of Trump supporters stormed the US Capitol. There was a riot. Critics believe Trump orchestrated it. And that counts as an insurrection. They believe Trump tried to incite an insurrection and a violent uprising against the state. So he should be barred from contesting for public office. That is the insurrection clause. This amendment was added in 1868, after the American Civil War. The purpose was to prevent members of the losing side from regaining power, to handicap leaders from the American South. That was the original idea. The insurrection clause was not added thinking about modern US politics. But the clause still exists, and so the US Constitution prohibits insurrectionists from standing for the presidency. Donald Trump has thus been barred from contesting in Maine's Republican primary election. He was disqualified by the Secretary of State in Maine. She's a Democratic Party member, and he was disqualified by her, not by a court. But the decision is still on hold until a court ruling, like I said. In Colorado, it was the other way around. The court disqualified Trump, but it's waiting for the Supreme Court to take the final call. So both the states are pushing this through the legal route, perhaps to put pressure on the US Supreme Court to take a stand. So far, the Supreme Court has been dragging its feet. Most American courts have. It seems like no one wants to rule on the insurrection clause. Modern democracy is about people electing their leaders, and many feel that unelected judges should not have a say in this, which makes sense. But now that the legal challenges are being made, the state courts seem to be trying to avoid this responsibility. Everyone is looking for someone higher to blame. And that will be the US Supreme Court. And while all this drama unfolds in America, let's zoom out a bit. Look at it from an outsider's perspective. We see a country going to polls, an incumbent president with only one viable challenger and a solid challenger. Suddenly, his name is taken off the ballot in 2 of the president's strongholds. And in one case, a member of the ruling party removes the opponent. They call him a security threat. What does this sound like? A shining example of Western democracy or some sort of banana republic? Imagine if this were happening somewhere else. The US would have begun the lectures on free and fair elections. They love teaching the world about this, free and fair elections. Just ask Bangladesh. The Americans are actively meddling there, asking the government to speak to the opposition. But at home, their opposition candidate is being disqualified in one state after another. So what should the world do now? Send observers to the US election? Or add it to the list of backsliding democracies? Now let's look at more chaos in the Americas. Venezuela and Guyana are neighbors. They're locked in a territorial dispute. The situation has been escalating, and now a British warship has entered the picture. The UK has sent the warship to support its former colony, Guyana. In response, Venezuela has rallied its armed forces. President Nicolas Maduro is livid. Thousands of troops are preparing for drills for land, air, and sea operations in the Eastern Caribbean. It's a grand show of force. Maduro's answer to what he calls the decadent former British Empire. His words. Here's a report.
So today we have issued a statement of condemnation, of rejection, in which Venezuela reserves all constitutional actions within the framework of international law to defend our territorial integrity, our waters, our Atlantic, and our national sovereignty.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is ready for action. He has put on his wartime baseball cap. He's mobilizing his forces, preparing them for war against an existential threat.
This is why I have ordered the activation of a joint action of the entire Bolivarian National Military Armed Forces over the Eastern Caribbean of Venezuela, over the Atlantic facade, and a joint action of a defensive nature as a response to the provocation and threat of the United Kingdom against the peace and sovereignty of our country.
That mighty threat is apparently the United Kingdom. Not the US, but the UK. How did this happen? How did the British become a threat to Venezuela almost a century after their glory days?
Guyana has privately ratified that it will host the threatening ship from the decadent former British Empire.
The threatening ship is a British warship being sent to Guyana. Guyana is a former British colony in South America. It neighbors Venezuela, and recently the two neighbors have been caught in a diplomatic crisis. It's over land, an area known as Essequibo. Essequibo makes up almost 3/4 of Guyana. The area is rich in resources, including oil. It has been governed by Guyana for decades, but Venezuela claims the entire region for itself. It says Essequibo was stolen by the British all the way back in the 1800s, and Caracas has tried to take the region back diplomatically for years. But this year, Maduro got tired of waiting. Instead, he held a referendum. He asked his citizens if they should just start handing out Venezuelan passports to the people of Essequibo. He asked his citizens if they should just start handing out Venezuelan passports to the people of Essequibo. And almost 100% of the people voted yes. Those who showed up to vote anyway. The voter turnout is disputed. Maduro and his allies say that over 51% of eligible people voted. His opponents say the turnout was about 10%. Not really a thumping endorsement for his cause. But nonetheless, Maduro has decided that Essequibo is of high priority. Which brings us back to the new decadent British threat. Maduro is summoning his forces, conducting defensive exercises with around 6,000 troops. That will surely deter the British nautical threat lurking around the Guyana coast. And what is this threatening British warship? The dreaded HMS Trent. Can it carry ballistic missiles? No. Combat aircraft? Just a helicopter and some drones. A legion of troops then? Well, about 50 people at best. So then why is Maduro mobilizing 6,000 troops to challenge this patrol boat? Perhaps he has other intentions. He may be looking to galvanize his supporters, unite the country in the face of a foreign enemy. But the thing is, the decadent former British Empire doesn't really scream death and destruction these days, especially not when they're sending a patrol boat to look tough to their former colony. So Maduro is really clutching at straws as he tries to create an existential crisis.
Last show of the year, so it's time for a roundup. How was 2023 for Indian diplomacy? There's a lot to pick from. Multiple foreign visits, a lot of multinational summits, also some raging controversies. But we've picked 5 major themes and events. Number 1, of course, is the G20 success. It was India's first time presiding over the G20, so New Delhi brought its own flavor. It took diplomacy beyond the government offices in New Delhi. The G20 became a people's movement. Some 200 meetings were held in 60 cities. The main event was the Leaders' Summit in September. A lot was riding on India. Vladimir Putin could not make it. Xi Jinping decided not to come. And the West and Russia refused to agree on anything, so a joint statement looked impossible. In fact, the previous minister-level meetings did not have a joint statement. But when it mattered, India pulled it off. A consensus was reached in a divided world. Another G20 success was expansion. India championed the entry of a new member into the G20. That's the African Union. With one move, India announced itself as a champion of the global south. I mean, the pictures were telling. Prime Minister Modi embracing the African Union President, Xi Jinping not even in the room. So the G20 was a big hit, and so was hashtag Melody. People couldn't stop talking about Prime Minister Modi and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. They clearly have a great equation, one that the internet also appreciated. But the high did not last long. Just days later, Justin Trudeau dropped a bombshell.
Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Trudeau accused India of killing a Khalistani terrorist in Canada. His name was Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Just one problem though, Trudeau had no proof. And soon things got ugly. Canada ousted India's intelligence officer in Ottawa. New Delhi responded in kind. It also asked Canada to pull out 41 diplomats from India. Now, the reaction to this has been mixed. The West has not pointed fingers at India, but they have asked India to cooperate. So the idea is to manage things in a low-key manner. Not sure Trudeau got the memo, though, because months later, he's still on the same path. No proof, more allegations. Which brings us to the third theme, India-US relations. It's been an interesting year for New Delhi and Washington. The first half was a fairy tale. In the month of June, Prime Minister Modi visited Washington. Biden had invited him for a state visit. There was a private dinner, a gala dinner, a bilateral and a White House welcome. The Prime Minister also addressed the US Congress. So all in all, a great visit. The biggest takeaway was probably the jet engine deal. The US and India have decided to make jet engines together. Why is this important? Because jet engines are crucial tech. The US normally does not share it with others. So a joint project with India is a big deal. But after this high came a dampener. In late November, the US government charged an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, accused of plotting to kill a US-based Khalistani. The charges also mentioned an Indian government official. This time, New Delhi ordered a probe. Multiple US officials have also made trips to India, but on the whole, the strategy remains the same. Manage things in a low-key manner.
They have opened an investigation into the matter, and we look forward to seeing the results of that investigation.
Prime Minister Modi also addressed this controversy. He said India-US ties are resilient. Well, this issue will be a test of that, because since the last decade, or in the last decade rather, this relationship has mostly seen highs. Let's call it the honeymoon period. But can it survive the rigors of a long-term partnership? We may find out next year. Now, theme number 4, New Frontiers. In January, Egypt's president was chief guest at India's Republic Day. His name is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Then in June, Modi traveled to Cairo. It was the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 26 years. Now, this relationship itself is old, India and Egypt. But in the last decades, it lost momentum. The idea is to revive it. Egypt is a major African buyer of arms. It's reportedly interested in India's Tejas fighter jet. And before Egypt, Prime Minister Modi also visited Papua New Guinea. Again, new frontier because the Pacific is not India's traditional sphere of influence. This visit also went viral for this gesture. Visits also matched actions. In the month of May, India held its first ever joint drill with ASEAN in the South China Sea. Now, ASEAN is a multinational bloc in Southeast Asia. Most ASEAN members have territory disputes with China. Another new frontier was Greece. Prime Minister Modi visited the country in August. It was the first such trip in 40 years. Greece is a key part of the proposed trade corridor between Europe, West Asia and India. So in hindsight, it was a strategic choice. Now finally, number 5, the news that came in yesterday, Qatar decided to cancel the death penalty of former Indian sailors. 8 of them are in prison. They've been accused of spying on Qatar's military, and that too reportedly for Israel. Now, if you know Qatar, that's a suicide mission. But New Delhi pulled through. Prime Minister Modi spoke to Qatar's emir at the COP28 summit. Indian diplomats were constantly offering consular support, and yesterday the good news came. It's not a big bang success like the G20, but it's proof of mature and behind-the-scenes diplomacy. India will need that going forward. So looking back, 2023 was a good year in diplomacy. The highs clearly outweigh the challenges. Let's see what 2024 brings. And now to the big story from Turkey. They've raised the minimum wage by 49%. It's a steep rise. But Ankara says it's a much-needed rise. Turkey is dealing with a cost of living crisis, so this will offer some relief to citizens. But it could also complicate things, like Turkey's fight against inflation. So why is President Erdogan doing it? The obvious answer is the local elections. Turkey will choose its mayors in 2024, and Erdogan wants to win Istanbul back. But will this be enough to sway the public? Our next report tells you.
In the first decade of this century, Turkey's economy was a success story. It was growing rapidly. Everything was going well. Until it wasn't. Things began unraveling in 2013. Since 2019, Turkey has witnessed double-digit inflation. We are nearing the end of 2023. The Turkish economy is in tatters. Inflation is still soaring, but the government is back to its populist measures. This time they've hiked the minimum wage. Turkey has raised minimum wage by 49%. The monthly minimum wage will be raised to $578, and it's long overdue. Turkey is dealing with a cost of living crisis. The lira has plunged. In 2021, $1 was worth around 8 Turkish lira. In July 2023, it was around 27 lira. This year, it lost around 35% of its value against the dollar. And that means two things: economic turmoil and spiraling prices. Food, utilities, rent, the prices skyrocketed, and Turkey's residents were left struggling.
I want the dollar exchange rate to decline. I want the price of petrol and inflation to drop. I want to go back to the life I had 5 or 6 years ago. I want to be able to go on a picnic and travel abroad.
We are poor people. Of course, I would like the price of whatever goes into my kitchen to decrease. It is a good thing for us. We cannot buy meat. It's never present in our kitchen. If we get 3 or 5 of these vegetables, it's good. If we buy them today, we can't afford them the next day. So, of course, I want the prices to drop.
1/3 of its population earns minimum wage, so they were at the risk of poverty. Some can't afford rent, some can't afford food, and many can't afford both. So hiking the minimum wages will do them some good. It will ease their difficulties. But will it do more harm to the economy? Last month, Turkey's inflation was at 62%. The central bank has hiked interest rates, but even that hasn't worked. Higher interest rates have begun to slow consumption. Recovery will take time, at least 2 more years. So cooling inflation will be a lengthy process. But hiking minimum wages could hamper that. Higher minimum wages are likely to push up inflation because the more money people have, the more they will spend. So why did Turkey's Labour Ministry take this move then? The answer is elections. Turkish residents will return to the ballot box on March 31st. They will vote for mayors across the country, and hiking minimum wages was targeted at that. Erdogan is no stranger to populist moves. He's kept interest rates low for years despite spiraling inflation, all to be in the good books of the public. This time, though, he has a lot at stake. In 2023, he won the presidential elections. It's his third decade in power. But next year, he wants to win Istanbul and Ankara. Turkey's biggest city and its capital are both in control of the opposition, and Erdogan wants them back. So will hiking minimum wages be enough? Will it make the voters back his party? Or will this bout of Erdoganomics push Turkey into further turmoil?
Do you know what a youthquake is? Well, surprisingly, it is in the dictionary. A youthquake is an important social or political change, one that is triggered by young people. Say young voters oust a long-serving politician from power. That's a youthquake. Many experts say a global youthquake is coming, and its epicenter is Africa. Most of the world, especially richer nations, are getting old. Meanwhile, Africa is young as ever. Just look at these numbers. The median age in Africa is just 19. Here in India, it's 28. In the US and China, it's 38. So clearly, Africa has an edge. By the next decade, Africa will have the largest workforce in the world. It will overtake India and China. By the 2040s, 2 out of every 5 children born will be African. By the 2050s, 33% of young people will be African. That's between 15 and 24 years of age. Around the same time, Africa will make up 25% of the total population, meaning 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. Now, I know that's a lot of numbers, but the big takeaway is this. The rest of the world will get old in this century. Africa will not. It will have a young, vibrant population by the 2050s. But can they cause a youthquake? Depends. For starters, we can't look at Africa as a monolith. Most Western experts tend to do that. But the fact is, Africa has 54 countries. Each of them has a different culture, a different demography, different leadership and resources. So their fortunes will also be different. Secondly, having a large population is not enough. Can you skill and educate them? Can you give them jobs? Well, the first part is okay. Around 44% of young Africans graduated high school in 2020. It was just 27% in the year 2000. What about health? Again, there is improvement. Africans have added 10 years to their life expectancy. It's gone from 46 to 56 in 20 years. Life expectancy, the global average is 64. So those stereotypes that you see on TV are not true. Africa has come a long way. Having said that, one problem still remains, and that is the problem of jobs. Consider South Africa. It's one of the biggest economies on the continent. But look at their unemployment, more than 30%. 1 in 3 South Africans do not have a job. So you can imagine the situation elsewhere in Africa. I guess it's all about policy. They have the resources, they have the young population. They also have a steady line of investors. China, Europe, Russia, the US, all of them are ready to put money in Africa. It's all about seizing the moment. But I must say, all this talk of the 2040s and 2050s raises a different question. That of Gen Z. People born between 1996 and 2010, that's Gen Z. Anyone, if anyone, can cause a youthquake. It is Gen Z. Today, they're the punchline to every joke. They make reels, they live a carefree life, but they're also very vocal. What would a world run by Gen Z look like? It's an important question. Globally, the average age of lawmakers is 50. So by 2050, Gen Z will be in charge, running parliaments, making laws, and soon enough, running countries. And what will that look like? Well, we don't have a crystal ball, but we do know the defining characters of Gen Z, like crazy high expectations, the need for instant results, shorter attention spans, fearless but often uninformed opinions, and finally, the need for validation. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a spoiled child. But that's also what generational change looks like. If you ask someone who lived in the 1940s, they will say they had it rough. A world war, fights for independence, nation building. Compared to that, life became easier in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Same thing now. Life is easier today than in the last century. As a result, expectations are sky high. There is no appetite for struggle, it seems, no tolerance for difference of opinion, and no patience to wait for results. Is that good or bad? I'm afraid the jury is still out on that. Every generation finds a way to survive and thrive. I'm sure Gen Z will do the same. But in politics, they may have some trouble. Because here you need different attributes. Low expectations, a very thick skin, and of course, a lot of patience. Some political investments take decades to bear fruit, like the recent Arab-Israel normalization process, or the new momentum in India-US relations. Can Gen Z replicate things like that? Well, even if they can't, one thing is guaranteed: it will be entertaining. Idli popsicle, pancake spaghetti, Fanta omelette, dal makhni ice cream rolls, bhoot jolakia chips. And no, this is not a list of bizarre food items ChatGPT came up with. These food items actually exist, and some people even enjoy them. We all know food is a personal choice, but when does personal become weird? Bizarre food items are all the rage, and social media has made it worse. You can love or hate them, but Reels have made sure you cannot ignore them. Our next report looks at a few of these extreme food items and trends of 2023.
Culinary curiosity is great. It's how great dishes are made. If you are a chef, you're supposed to push the limits to produce something that has never been tasted. But when does it go too far? When does your culinary marvel go from avant-garde to bizarre? Like this Fanta omelette. Yes, you heard that right. Bright orange soda and some good old eggs. As the eggs dance in the bubbly embrace of Fanta, you can't help but wonder, what did you do in life to deserve this? Is this now the way to cook eggs? And while you struggle with self-doubt, why not try some ice cream? That always soothes the soul, right? Or will it? If your mother ever complained about you not having enough dal, that's lentils, this will become her new favorite dish, dal makhani ice cream rolls. Buttery dal turned into a frozen treat. And if that seems too much for you, we can tune it down a bit, like pancake spaghetti. It's harmless, basically pancake batter fried in the shape of spaghetti. In case sweet pasta isn't your thing, then there's idli popsicles. Don't like the idea of getting your hand dirty? Put it on a stick. Eat it on the go. It's convenient. Just like this chopped sandwich. The biggest peeve of eating any sandwich is the condiments falling out. So you just chop up all the ingredients, mix them together, put it in a sandwich. Every bite will be the perfect bite. Maybe not all of this wizardry is bad. And it gets better when it comes to hot chips, if that's your thing. You must try this bhoot jolakia chip. Warning, don't touch your face and eyes afterwards, because it could set more than your mouth on fire. In Australia, hot chips are a factory hazard. For example, the Smith's Chips factory. It's located in Adelaide. They make spicy Doritos. And the workers are not too happy about it. They say the seasoning causes skin irritation and that they have difficulty breathing. Guess the hot seasoning is not for everyone. And here's another thing that's not for everyone. But TikTok has made it a big deal. It's our good old water. TikTok says it doesn't taste like anything. So why not make it better? Introducing flavored water. There's loads of flavors, from orange popsicle to creamy vanilla. It's a trendy way to hydrate. If it makes you drink more water, who are we to stop you? Because as we said, food is a personal choice, to each his own. As we navigate this culinary carnival of oddities, you will be shocked. But you also can't help but marvel at the minds who created these gastronomic experiments. 2023 was full of many extreme foods. 2024 will bring some more. The next food trend may just catapult us into uncharted realms of flavor. because the only certainty is the uncertainty of what could be on your plate.
After extreme food, let's talk about an extreme sport, the New Year's Eve. It is touted as a juncture of hope and renewal, of fresh starts and a clean slate. In fact, superstition is that if the New Year's Eve is appalling, then that's how the next year is going to be. So there is immense pressure, not just to participate, but to do it right. And the movies agree. They show a New Year's Eve full of intrigue, with attractive people in sparkly outfits strutting off to vacation spots. It looks so exciting, we oblige. But the reality looks different. Because if you had the idea to travel, so did thousands of others. This is what Indian hill stations look like right now. Manali is one of the worst hit. Over 65,000 tourists entered the hilly town just on Christmas Day. 65,000 people. They began their long vacation by causing a traffic nightmare. There were few who avoided the jam. They took the road not taken, quite literally, by driving through a river. But hill stations aren't the only ones taking a hit. Other vacation hotspots like Jaipur are also congested.
भाई ये 6 घंटे से हम जाम में खड़े हैं जयपुर में और ये जाम की कोई सीमा नहीं.
India is hardly the only one with a travel surge. In China, travel enthusiasm is like no other. After 3 years of restrictions, the Chinese are unleashing their party energy. Year-end travel bookings have risen by, and wait for it, 465% compared to last year. That's the spike, 465%. Train bookings have surged by 194%. During New Year's weekend, 1.5 million people will cross China's border, with tourists celebrating in China and the Chinese vacationing abroad. America is a travel hotspot too. In this last week of December, people are flocking in to see the ball drop. And 115 million Americans are traveling, a 2.2% increase compared to last year. It seems like the entire world has plans, especially if we were to believe social media. New Year's Eve is like that extroverted party guest. You see it once a year. It arrives super late. No matter how exhausted you are after a long year, it demands that you turn up the music. And the night usually ends with regrets about not having a good time, or remorse about having too much of a good time. No matter what you do, there's a good chance New Year's Eve will be terrible. According to a 1999 study, the harder people try to make New Year's Eve fun, the more dissatisfied they are. Study after study underscores this concept. Forcing yourself to be happy is the surest way to be miserable. The pressure to have a good time is so huge, the end result is usually underwhelming, if not downright depressing, which makes sense. The newness we hope for is only ours to construct. January 1st is just a number after all. And it's not everyone's number of choice either. The Chinese New Year is in February next year. Ethiopians will celebrate theirs in September. Many Muslims will celebrate it in July, and in India, a New Year is celebrated on 9 different dates due to the cultural diversity. Not just the date, but the manner of celebration differs too. Many Indians light lamps, the Danish smash plates, Brazilians eat lentils, the Spanish eat grapes, and South Americans walk with empty suitcases. So before you welcome new beginnings, here's some food for thought. This New Year's Eve, allow yourself to do what you want, travel or party, only if you want to. But also know that there's nothing wrong with a low-key ceremony at home. Call it an early night. Or if you're a parent, argue about bedtime with your children till midnight. And if that doesn't cut it, smash plates, eat grapes, or light a lamp. Whatever works for you. But most of all, take off the pressure. A New Year's Eve is as much about renewal as it is about changing digits from 2023 to 2024. And if that is all the change that you want to celebrate, you do you. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In London, a plane made a bumpy landing at the Heathrow airport due to strong winds. In California, rough waves battered the coast, damaging cars and injuring people. And in New York, people said good riddance to 2023 by burning their bad memories. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1940, London witnessed its most devastating air raid during the Second World War. German aircraft dropped thousands of bombs on London's city centre. This raid caused the second Great Fire of London. Thousands of houses were engulfed in flames. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. Have a happy new year. We'll see you again in 2024.
Might hear that vortex crashing down on me. Listen to it. It's over the top of me now. Oh! 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 Stop it! Oh! 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 Stop! Stop that! Stop that! Oh! Oh my God, mate! Now you tell me those pilots weren't like, oh, flipping it! Hold on a minute! Oh my goodness me, how we did not go around, I just didn't do it.
Those are fantastic things. Devante, what do you think?
Everybody can agree, no more war.
Let's say goodbye to it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, and it's gone. You know what? We should say goodbye to 2023, right? We are saying goodbye to 2023 for Good Riddance Day here in Times Square. Devante, make 2023 disappear. Wow. And boom, just like that, it's gone. Give it up for Devante in 2023's Good Riddance Day.